I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James White, Field Yates Meanakeims. All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
Well, along those lines, Taylor, then, we're still at Ole Miss here, and I'm working on this name. I will have it down by the time we get to the combine. Princely, you know who I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
Princely Umanilian, I think it is. Umanilian. More of a linebacker, outside linebacker, but like he's a pass rusher, and right now he's just winning on like length and athleticism. The tools are there for him to be a much more diverse pass rusher, and that's why he's a projected day 2 pick instead of first round pick, because I think he has the athleticism, I think he has the explosiveness to be up there with Abdul Carter's in his own tier, but to be up there with a guy like a Michael Williams or a James Pierce, but he's just not as developed as those guys. But I'm sure Troy Williams will work with some linebackers as well. And maybe he can kind of get that. Another guy that, how'd you phrase it? You just need to get the potential out of him.
Yeah. Just like sometimes you just got to make sure you get that mentality shift where they really get the buy-in, and then you just teach them fundamentally how to be the best versions of themselves. Then it's like, oh, wait, defending the run can be fun when you're jacking guys up and you're pushing somebody like 2 feet behind the line of scrimmage and making tackles for loss. Like, yeah. Then it's not as much fun as sacking a quarterback, but it's also pretty fun. And sometimes these guys just need to kind of get their head on straight so they're willing to do everything it takes to succeed in the NFL consistently.
Right.
Okay, so while we're already on the topic of edge rushers, let's keep going. Who are some guys that you're going to be looking at? Actually, I'm going to start off with a name that I want you to tell me about. Mike Green. I've been seeing his name a lot on Twitter. All the profiles I've read are like, no, this dude's an absolute menace. But he doesn't get talked about because he's out of Marshall. So is this a guy that you think is going to end up sneaking up into the top of the draft? And how high do you think he might end up going?
Yeah, so he reminds me a little bit just in terms of prospect makeup, not necessarily a similar player, but remember Muhammad Kamara last year?
Yeah.
Who I really liked. And he's one of these guys who was incredibly, incredibly productive in the group of 5. And there's some traits there you like, but when you look at the physical traits specifically, it's always kind of tough to tell, okay, well, he's not going against these NFL caliber prospects game in and game out. And so how do you really measure it up? Mike Green's like that, kind of different than Kamara in the sense that Kamara was like this big, stocky guy. He wasn't tall, but he was like this thick, stocky guy. And is he going to be able to overpower NFL edge rushers? Mike Green's the other way where he's just, he's a speed rusher, but he's kind of undersized, and is he just going to get pushed around? Watching him going up against a guy like Anthony Belton is going to be fascinating. Who has those long arms, and can he just kind of knock him off the spot? So for a guy like Mike Green, this is a huge week for him. He needs to prove that he can hang with these Power 5 top tier kinds of prospects, because you like what you see on tape, but the nature of his position, the nature in which he wins, sometimes these guys translate, sometimes they don't. And you don't really know until you actually get to see it in action. So he's got to have a big week this week.
And this is one of the more exciting positions, I think, at the Senior Bowl, because there's a lot of good players at these edge spots. They've all got some deficiencies and things.
It's a really good edge draft, Taylor. Everybody yelling about the draft sucking. Like, some positions, yes. Let's talk about some good ones too. And edge or running back is the best position in this draft.
So that's kind of why I wanted to close out with this. We're going to talk about one more position, but this is like the last one we're really going to go in depth. Honestly, man, Go nuts. Who are some names that you're excited about? Because there's a lot of them, and I don't want to leave any out if we don't have to.
I kind of want to talk about, I'm not even going to try again, the guy from Ole Miss. But the other one, because I think there's a real chance he's a Patriot, and that's Kyle Kennard.
Yeah.
Because, he's got all the tool. Like, he looks like a Patriots pass rusher when you watch him. He's diverse stylistically. He's got good size. He's got good burst. He's disciplined. So many of these guys now that are great pass rushers, I think, kind of know it. And so they get a little wild.
Yep.
He's not really, Kennard's not, Kennard seems, he's not the most disciplined pass rusher I've ever seen, but I think he's a little wise beyond his years in that regard. Now, he's probably only a pass rusher, and that's the downside with a lot of the rushers in this draft. There's not a lot of 3-down edge guys, which, teams are going to have to ask themselves some tough questions. James Pierce, and he's not at the Senior Bowl, but he's a fascinating player to talk about in this regard, and his value is going to kind of set the value for the rest of these guys. James Pierce, a hell of a pass rusher.
Yeah.
That's probably all he is. He's not going to be a guy, at least early in his career, the first few years, who plays on 3 downs. Generally, if you're going to go in the top 15 as either a defensive lineman or an outside linebacker, you have to be able to play all 3 downs. Now, maybe you're a better pass rusher than run stopper, but you need to at least be able to be out there. And the question this year is James Pierce a good enough pass rusher to justify in a weak draft kind of breaking that mold or not? Because if he is, he's going to go in the top 10. And then that pushes some of these other guys up the board. If teams just kind of start deciding, you know what? It's just not the year. We're just not going to take these pass rushers and reach. Well, now James Pierce maybe falls closer to the 20s. And now you have a guy like Kyle Kennard, who's a fringe first-round pick, who's maybe in play in the 40s. And it's going to stack all that. But just looking at where the Patriots are picking, kind of their early projections, I really like Kyle Kennard for the Patriots. I know you're big on Devin. Ezeraku, right?
Donovan Ezeraku, yeah.
Donovan Ezeraku. So I'll let you talk about him, but I like Kennard.
So with Ezeraku, the reason that he kind of intrigues me, one, again, the BC connection is very obvious, but he's the mold that we talked about, where it was like, okay, if you get like a Josh Sweat, where he's not just a situational pass rusher, you can play him on every down, although his strength is pass rushing. That allows you to wait a little bit for the edge rusher. You don't have to get an Abdul Carter. Obviously, you'd like to. But then it's like, all right, if we get a guy where he's really going to be a pass rusher, he could probably do other things. We're just going to take some time to develop him. That'll be fine. And that feels like Ezeraku, where he can immediately give you a lot of juice off the edge. He is undersized, but one thing that made me feel even better about this was Terrell Williams being like, hey, I've had success with undersized guys before. The biggest example, Cameron Wake, when he was in Miami, but he's worked with all different types of shapes and sizes. So the undersized part of it doesn't really worry me too much. Also, hadn't had any major injuries. He was the ACC Defensive Player of the Year, first team All ACC. So he intrigues me as more of like a 3rd round kind of guy. Also, Josiah Stewart. I really like him as well. Another undersized edge rusher. But he fits what I think is going to be a better mold for this style of 4-down defense, where Jelani Tavai, his value is as an adjuster, where he can be your inside linebacker as the will in the 4-down fronts, but then when you want to go 5 down, he can be the strong side linebacker and also set the edge in the run game and kind of be that sort of guy. I think that what they're going to value more, because if you have 4-down linemen, those edge guys have to be able to rush the passer. They can't just be run stoppers. Tavai gives you no pass rush. Instead, you'd want guys like Carter, like Jahad Campbell, like Stewart, who can play inside linebacker, but also get down on the line of scrimmage and rush the passer a la like a Dante Hightower type, although Dante Hightower is obviously in his own vein. So with Stewart, I think you get a similar kind of thing where you can rush the passer, can also play on early downs for you, give you more of that coverage type linebacker. So I like the versatility, and I'm just kind of obsessed right now with that mold of guys who can play on and off the ball, giving you real juice getting after the pass.
So have you done any work on Jalen Walker yet from Georgia?
Not yet, no.
So that's the guy in this draft,
okay.
The player you're describing. The comp for him has actually been Gerard Mayo. But that's
which is weird if he's versatile like that, because Mayo never really played on the line.
Early career Mayo.
Oh, okay. I didn't watch early career Mayo.
He didn't do it a ton, but he did a little bit.
Okay.
But Jalen Walker, now it's the Georgia defense, so it's kind of tough to project roles because it's so unique the way they scheme it up. But he's not Senior Bowl, so we don't need to go a ton into him. But the guy you're describing, that's kind of the top of that tree. If you want,
when is he going to go?
Probably early teens. So I don't know how realistic he is for the Patriots unless they're moving way down. But it still helps to know, because now you kind of look at, okay, how big are the gaps between these similar players, and that's how you figure out where you want to get each player. How you kind of want to value different players throughout the draft.
It's a great point. And you know who Bleacher Report compared him to?
Oh, Dante
Pro
Hightower.
Bowler Kyle Van Noy.
Oh, yeah, that's another good one.
Literally is what you're looking for. That's exactly what you want.
So he's just a Patriots linebacker.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, I'm definitely going to dive into him. Support us and sign up at Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS or download the app today and use code CLNS at prizepicks.com/CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5.